Welcome to Pricing WordPress, the podcast that helps to remove the mystery and stress from pricing WordPress products and services. I'm your host, Keith Devon, and this episode is part 2 of my interview with Jonathan Stark. If you haven't heard part 1 yet, I recommend that you start there, as Jonathan gives a great introduction to value-based pricing and why he realised that hourly billing was crazy. In part 2, we discuss what happens if a client has self-prescribed and diagnosed, what happens when a client just needs a pair of hands, working on higher value upstream tasks, how do you get to a price once you know the value, common objections and obstacles to value-based pricing, the stench of desperation, what to do if you find a major shortcut during a project, can you value price maintenance work, and much more. Pricing WordPress is supported by Hi-Rise Digital. Hi-Rise Digital is a UK-based specialist WordPress development team focused on providing long-term development services for businesses based on WordPress. If you'd like to learn more about them, you can visit highrise.digital. Now, let's get on with the show. What happens if, for example, a client comes to you, or a prospect comes to you, as they often do, having self-diagnosed and self-prescribed a solution, and you have the value conversation and the why questions with them, and you actually come to the realization that what they have prescribed for themselves will fix their problem.
You believe it will?
I believe it will.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can see that there's value to the client. But at that point, you've been kind of cut out of the value, the value side of what you were going to offer, and actually you're just going to be quoting on what they've delivered, like their brief, and then you're going to be up against everybody else.
No, because when it gets to the why me questions, you're going to get qualified out.
Yeah. Okay.
So why me? Why not like Joe down the street? Well, yeah, we're talking to Joe too, and I'm like, well, then just go with Joe. He's cheaper. Like, I'm going to be more expensive than Joe, so don't go with me. Okay. Yeah. So, but what you're getting at, where I thought you were going, and I think maybe half the question is here: what happens when they really just need a pair of hands? Like, what happens when they have like a CTO who's super smart about WordPress or iOS or whatever, and they just don't have enough bodies to execute as fast as they want, and they really want staff augmentation. Really, those are not great clients if you want to sell highly profitable work, because it's like trying to sell shoes to cobblers. Like, even if cobblers don't have shoes, they don't want your shoes. They're going to be super picky about how you do it. They're going to be kind of ticked off that somebody else is making shoes for their kids. They should really be doing it, but they're frustrated they don't have time. They know how to do it better than you. So you're not being brought in as an expert. You're being brought in as like just labor. Yeah. And sometimes you need to, keep the lights on, and you need that money, and that's fine. You can do that, but recognize that what you're doing is you're renting out your hands, and that's not the most valuable part of you. The most valuable part of you, if you've been doing WordPress for, how long did you say, 8 years? Yeah. If you've been doing it for that long, you're an expert at certain things, and you're going to know way more about WordPress than someone who runs a pizza place or a national chain of pizza places, or you know what I mean? Someone who sells shoes, to use the shoe metaphor, they're not an expert at WordPress. They might, they're good at running a business. They understand their customers inside out. They know all of their stuff. You know all of your stuff. And if there's a place that you can meet in the middle where there's a high value in them having an expert at WordPress and not someone who just learned it, then great, let's talk. There could be a good fit here. And then you put together a proposal that's higher value. And you want to lean heavily on the things that are advisory or strategic or design oriented. The upfront planning phases where they need a new status quo. You work with them you pair your two different expertises. So they're experts at their business and their customers, and you're an expert with WordPress. There's a meeting of the minds at the beginning, and you create a plan for the new status quo. Whether it's wireframes, an architecture diagram, migration plan, it could, disaster recovery. There could be all of these things that you plan. You're coming up with a design what design is, whatever the deliverable is, it's some kind of plan that someone's going to execute to create a new status quo for the business. Okay. Maybe you'll actually build, if you use the architect model, you be the architect at first. This is the highest value work. This is the highest profit work, is the early upstream work, because it has massive downstream effects. If you design the wrong thing, the thing's going to stink. So the blueprint needs to be right. Maybe you also go and pound nails and build the thing after you created the blueprint. Maybe you also build it. Maybe you are a general contractor and you get people to build it and you oversee them. And then once the thing is built, then the client is going to need maintenance people and janitors and people to maintain this new status quo. And some people will go and say, okay, I'm going to be the janitor in the building now. Or they say, no, I don't want that work. Usually the architect isn't changing toilet paper rolls at the end of the day. So, you got to decide what kind of work you want to do. And I think most people are more toward the maintenance man, carpenter end of the spectrum. And what you want to do is move yourself closer to the front end. I call it the higher altitude. So you've got this low altitude stuff, which is support and maintenance. You've got this middle altitude stuff, which is building, implementation, execution, where you've been handed a plan. Maybe you made the plan, but you have a plan in hand and you're just making it real. And then the highest level is strategic, where you're making the plans with the client. Maybe you don't build them, and you definitely, if you're doing the strategy, you're definitely not doing support. So yeah, so moving to a higher altitude, always pushing to the higher altitude, and saying no to clients that just want you as a pair of hands. That's how this answer started. You asked what if they really need a pair of hands?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to dig in a bit more into the kind of best scenarios and worst scenarios potentially for value pricing in a moment. But just bringing it back quickly to actually setting a price in the proposal stage. You talked about giving 3 options, and that was based around already knowing potentially the prospect's budget expectations. You said just give me a ballpark or a range, and then you can base your options in and around that range. Mm-hmm. If you haven't had to ask that question about budget, because during the value conversation you've got really good information, okay, I know that if this is executed successfully, it's gonna bring 10 million to the business year on year for the next 5 years or something like that. Mm-hmm. If you know that, you haven't had to ask about budget. Yep. How do you get to a price from the value?
Oh, I usually just divide it by 10.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Is there a kind of a magic number or formula?
Yeah. You could divide it by 5. It depends on how certain you are that you can control it. So if you do something that's super super far upstream, like branding, or some kind of marketing thing that doesn't translate directly into clicks, like web design, or UX, something like that. Something that's way upstream from sales and doesn't appear, you can't really reliably track where it goes into the ultimate business benefit. Then you need to essentially discount the whatever. Let's say it's $1 million. You said 10 million, I think, but let's say it's $1 million. Like, this is definitely $1 million a year business benefit for them. It's maybe they're not going to make $1 million, but it's worth $1 million to them every year. So, okay, it's worth $1 million to them every year for some reason, and you've got a really good, you feel really strongly. They blurt it out. Oh, we'd spend $1 million a year on this solution if this works the way we want it to. All right, great. So if you just divide by 10 and say 100,000, because you can't guarantee, if you could guarantee that it's going to work, it's going to be done, it's going to result in the outcome that they believe, then sure, charge $1 million for it. You could probably charge more than $1 million for it. Mm-hmm. But there's too many people involved usually, or maybe you're way upstream, like you're a branding or UX type of person, and you're not the only person contributing to that outcome. So in the why conversation, you should have found this out anyway. It's like, let's say you're a branding person and you're not actually doing the nuts and bolts of the WordPress. You do branding. It's like, you could say to them, well, why would you hire brand? Like, why not do branding? Why not just go ahead? Why not just have your cousin who just graduated from art school just make a logo, or,
Sure.
Why not just do that? And if they say something like, well, we were thinking about that, then you're dead. Like there's no reason to engage. But if they say something like, we did that last time and we lost $1 million, launching a product, 2 crickets. So this time we're going to do it right. We want to start with an expert. You are the name that was recommended to us. We really want to work with you. We don't want to get burned again. Now you've got that sounds like a good client to me.
Yeah.
So the number. So once you have the value, just the easiest thing to do is divide it by 10. Okay. So now you've got, if it was $1 million, you think it's $1 million. So you're giving yourself a huge amount of room to be wrong by dividing it by 10. Because even if you're off by a lot, it's still probably worth something. It's still probably a reasonable price.
Yeah.
So $100,000. All right. What could I do for $100,000? And then you make some options around either below that or above that, depending on which way you want to skew, how bad you want the job, so forth, so on and so forth.
But does the top option, I'm assuming the top option and the bottom option, like, okay, so the bottom option can't achieve the desired result. It has to be like a kind of fraction of that. Would that be right? Because obviously if you say, okay, here's 3 options, this one will cost you this, but you'll still get the end result, they're going to go with the bottom one, right?
No. So yeah. So think of it like, think of a dashboard and you've got the speedometer, let's say. It's like, how much do you want this? How much of my contribution do you want to reaching this goal?
Okay.
So if we agree on the goal, then we say, okay, the goal is to decrease the bounce rate on the website on mobile by 50%. All right. That's pretty clear. It's easy to measure. I believe I can do that because the current website's terrible on mobile. So I'm highly confident that I can do that. So, all right, how much do you want me to contribute to this? I can give you an option where I just show you how to do it and you guys do it. Or I can do an option where we do it together. Or I can give you an option where I do everything for you. Obviously, the last one's going to be the most expensive, but probably happen the fastest. And I'm contributing the most to it's all the same goal. It's a question of how much of contribution, how much do you want me to contribute to the goal? So you got the sort of least level of contribution to the most contribution on the options. So then they can be like, well, that top option's pretty pricey. It would be nice, but we've got this. We've got this. If we just had some guidance, it would be fine. So they go with option 2 and you do the training thing and then you oversee the project, not manage, but oversee the project, make yourself available as like a mentor or do like pair programming or something. So yeah, it just depends on how much of you they want. So it's still contributing to the goal, but it's just less of a contribution.
And at each of those options, is your profit margin the same? Have you calculated kind of your cost? Because I know in your newsletter, your daily newsletter, which I read and love,
okay, thanks.
Recently you've been talking about value, then price, then cost.
Right.
So that kind of formula between price and cost, is that the same at those 3 options?
Yeah, so I'm just giving you rough numbers here. So understand that profit is what's left over. Okay, so usually when people bill by the hour, they think if I charge $100 an hour, that's all profit. Well, it's not all profit. How much would it cost you to have hired someone as an employee or a contractor to do that work for you? Whatever, if you hired a mini me to by the hour and you're billing out at 100 and you have to pay someone who's as good as you 85 an hour to do the work for you, your profit is teeny. It's teeny weeny. It's the amount that would be left over for the business after the employee is paid. And it's confusing for most people because they're the employee too, so it all feels like profit. But it's not. Only that little sliver at the top is the profit part. So if you do cost is is just as squishy as value. So like value is this subjective idea in the client's mind about how the maximum amount of money that this project would be worth to us. It's the maximum we would spend to get this done. If it was more than that, we wouldn't do the project. So the maximum amount that we would spend to get this done is maybe in their minds $100,000. So then you come up with like a $10,000 option. And then when you calculate your cost, you do it the same way. You think, what's the minimum amount of money I would take to execute this scope of work that I've designed for this $10,000 budget? So I'm reverse engineering the scope from the price. So it's like, all right, I don't want to work more than like 5 hours. For $10,000, I'm not working more than 5 hours because it'll probably be more like 15 hours. So I'm going to do something that's very controlled, can't creep, the creeping would be minor at most. So I'm going to design something that's very, very rigidly defined. This 2-hour crash course with their internal developer, and then like a list of plugins that they should install and what platform they should use. So that can't really scope creep. There might be a few questions, no big deal though. So it could be your profit percentage, to get back to your specific question, your profit percentage could be different at each one of these options. And it's not like a pattern to it. You just want it to be a good margin. You want like 100% margin, like retail would be, like luxury retail has huge markup, because that allows them to do all these other things like service to create like a high-end service experience. And that's what we all want to deliver, right? Wouldn't it be nice if we could deliver a really high-end service experience? Well, you need some profits to do that. So if you say like option 1 is the most profitable, or option 2 is the most profitable, option 3 is the most profitable, they're all way more profitable than anything you're doing now with hourly. So it should all be fine. And it depends on the nature of the work, which one is the most profitable. In general, this is very general, the most upstream thing you do will be the least amount of work, and it will be the most profitable percentage-wise. But sometimes you need, but it might be the least amount of money though, like an absolute dollar. Like it only takes you 2 minutes and you get $10,000. But if your business is struggling and you need the $100,000 one, because $10,000 is not going to do the trick, then okay, fine. Option 3 might be the least profitable for you. It's only 30% profitable, but it's going to get you $100,000 instead of $10,000. So all of these, you just have to weigh all these things. And I don't think there's a real pattern. Usually the smaller options are the least risky and the most profitable, usually.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
not always.
that was my kind of gut feel for how it would work. Yeah, because the scope could be slightly potentially more defined and bit more fixed.
Right.
I think I'd be doing listeners a disservice if I didn't get into some of the common objections and obstacles, because I do know that a lot of people have heard of value-based pricing. They like the idea of it, but they just really struggle to implement it. Now you've coached a lot of people in this model. What are the most common obstacles that you've come up against when it comes to implementing value-based pricing?
The biggest one is flipping. The biggest one is not thinking in terms of scope during a sales interview. That is by far the hardest thing to do. Probably took me 2 years to really stop thinking about scope on the phone call, to like truly not care about scope. So that's a big one. The other one is just the confidence to try and talk the client out of working with you, because most people are in this hand-to-mouth feast-famine cycle, and they need every lead they get. They're getting 2 leads a year. So a lead comes in and they're desperate, and it's really I'm going to say I've only seen it happen literally one time, where someone who I knew was desperate for money was able to execute a why conversation without sounding desperate once ever. Generally, you give off what Blair Enns calls the stench of desperation in these calls, and all of the power is resting with the client, and they make you dance, and they do this, do that, and you don't have the confidence to push back because you're so desperate for the money. So that's another huge problem. Another big piece of pushback is like people have been burned by fixed pricing before, and they are just mortally scared of scope creep. So if they do like an option 3, where I'm going to do everything soup to nuts, I'm going to design it, build it, host it, maintain it, all of that stuff, and they're just terrified that the client is going to nickel and dime them with like infinite revisions. So and there's a solution to that too, but these are all challenges. Like we started off by saying hourly billing's easy, because there's no risk. There's the only risk really is that you're going to underestimate a project and the client's going to end on a bad note. That's the main risk, and that you end up like trapped by your business, and you probably end up thinking, geez, I should just get a full-time job. It'd be so much easier. So hourly billing's easy. This stuff is not easy. So I understand the pushback. So what I would recommend to people is to not swing for the fence on your first try. It takes practice to understand what I'm talking about. It's also an amazing feeling the first time if you've never done a fixed price project. It's amazing the shift. Like you get the check, you sit down to start working, and it's a complete switch is flipped. It happened to me. It's happened for all my students. When you sit down the first time and you've got and every minute that you're typing, you're losing money, instead of every minute you're typing, you're making money, changes everything. It changes everything.
That's an amazing way to think of it. Yeah, I've never quite thought of it in those terms, so it makes it very clear.
Yeah. You stop refactoring unnecessarily. You stop experimenting with new technologies. You're like, oh man, Vue seems really cool. I'm going to do this new website with Vue just to learn it. You wouldn't do that if you, on fixed price, you wouldn't do that. You'd never do that. You'd go straight to the thing that you were awesome at, and you would just knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
You'd never experiment with technology on a client project.
Yeah. Right at the start of the call, you mentioned about value pricing not seeming fair. And I know that was something. It's interestingly, there was a tweet I put out a little while ago, and it was a little pricing conundrum. Mm-hmm. And it's actually what started this whole process off, and why this podcast exists, and why we're talking right now. Mm-hmm. But it was essentially, I can't remember it exactly. I don't have it in front of me. But the situation was that you've given a fixed price quote to a client. They've agreed on it. You go to start the project, and you realize that there's a solution out there that achieves the goal that the client wants to achieve, but it's going to take you 1/10 of the time to deliver it than what you kind of built your quote or estimate on. What do you do? And I gave two options. It was a poll. One option was kind of keep the money, and the other one was give it back, or tell the client and give it back. And it started a really, really interesting kind of thread on Twitter. But one of the things that seemed to keep coming out was around fairness of pricing, and is it fair to keep that money, for example, in that situation? And I've heard it again recently about value pricing. Is it fair to charge more than you should? What are your thoughts on it exactly? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me turn the question around. Is it fair to quote a $10,000 estimate for a project that they end up paying $20,000 for?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound fair. That sounds like fraud almost. I mean, I know people don't do it on purpose, but hourly, ask anybody who's ever paid anybody by the hour what it feels like when the project goes over estimate. Ask anybody. Mm-hmm. It's awful. Whether it's work being done on your house, or your landscaper, or people you've hired to do design for your back end, it's awful. It's a terrible experience. You feel like there's no end in sight. I'm already bought in. I have all this sunk cost, and there's no end in sight. I've spent $100,000 with these people, and I've got nothing to show for it. You told me it was going to be $50,000. That seems unfair to me. That creates the client situation where the situation I was in before, where I felt like it was impossible for me to guarantee client satisfaction because I could never stick to a budget. It just never happened. I mean, it did happen sometimes, but hardly ever. It was very common. It's very common for these projects to go over estimate. But to your point about fairness, I think it's way more fair to give somebody a price up front so they can make an actual informed decision about whether or not this project is worth enough to them to spend this money. So if you're going to have a garage built, and somebody said, it'll probably be about $10,000. And then it ended, but we'll just bill you by the hour for our time and materials. And then it ends up being 20. Yeah. If the garage wasn't worth 20 to you, you're going to be really mad, right? It's like, if I knew it was 20 up front, I wouldn't have spent the money. So I would argue that barring illegal activity like extortion or gouging, which is an actual legal term, it's not just a random idea that you can just decide if something's gouging. Assuming it's not extortion or blackmail or something illegal, straight up lying, then giving someone a price in advance that they accept or reject and that you ultimately stick to, it can't be unfair. It can't be. they decided it's up to them to decide what it's worth to them. Now, your specific example is an interesting one. I have a blog post about it. The moral dilemma of, I can't remember the title, moral dilemma of hourly billing. And if you're billing by what you described was like, oh, wow, I discovered this tool. This actually happened to me. On one of my very first value priced gigs, I was contracted to build a particular interface for a particular software application. It was an additional feature. It needed to be live before a particular event. So it was very urgent because the person was going to a trade show and they wanted to demonstrate it with the folks at the trade show. Super urgent. It was a lot of work. We didn't have really tons of time to do it. It was an aggressive timeline. So I sat down to do it and I was just like, oof, this is way more work than I thought it was going to be. I thought this was going to be easier. I was overly optimistic, as often is the case. So, okay, so I search around and sure enough, there was a plugin that does everything that we needed. It was like $750 and I jumped at it. I was like, yeah, this is perfect. This will do everything. I just have to integrate it. I still had to integrate it. I still had to do some work. So I just said to the client, look, I didn't know this existed. This is going to be a lot of work. I'm afraid we're going to miss our deadline. Here's this thing. It's exactly what you want. You can look at the demo here. What do you say? I buy it. I'll transfer out of the money that you paid me already. I'll transfer the license to you and then I'll integrate it. And then we'll be, have a lot more sort of wiggle room on the deadline. So we'll have a bigger comfort zone, less risky, less scary. He was like, yeah, great. Sounds great. So, there's still the issue of the integration. And if you just wanted to be super transparent, and this would be basically do what I did, be like, hey man, I found out that there's this thing that basically does what you want. Why don't you just do that and I'll give you your money back for the project. They're probably going to say, nah, why don't you just use that and, get it done quicker. The quicker, the better. Every client wants a thing done yesterday. Nobody wants it to take a long time. Everybody wants it to take less time. So you can say to them, hey, I found this thing I'm going to use. I didn't know about it before. I know about it now. It's going to allow us to get the project done way faster. Does that sound good, or should I not buy it? And leave it up to them. Say like, no, don't buy it. We want you to work really hard.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. You can just leave it up to them. I can either buy it or not buy it. Do you want me to buy it? Out of the money that you already gave me? Yeah, why don't you buy it? Okay, cool. Because there'll probably be some licensing or ongoing cost anyway, so you need to get their approval. But at the end of the day, Bootstrap exists, React exists, like these things exist. It's kind of on you for if you're supposedly the expert and didn't know about this tool existing, that's kind of your fault. You probably should have known it. And maybe that's how you come to me. I probably should have known this existed, but it's brand new. It looks good. You can talk about the risks. Maybe it's too new. Maybe it's going to introduce a risk to the project. So I feel like the example is a little bit oversimplified. But at the end of the day, in a specific case of a specific project, you just work it out. You say to the customer, hey, but I don't think it necessarily means that you need to change how much you charge, because you can deliver the project a lot faster. And that's always worth money to the client in terms of opportunity cost. You get to market quicker.
Another objection I hear, and it's one that I guess I harbor as well, is that if we start value pricing projects and our competitors don't, are we still going to be competitive?
Sure.
Am I going to win any work?
Yep. Yeah. First of all, you start the whole sales conversation by saying you're going to be the most expensive one.
Yeah.
But most people are going to be doing hourly estimates. So here's what happens. This happened to me and students many occasions. Come back, the client comes, you give the proposal, the client comes back and they say, look, we really want to work with you, but you came in twice as much as the next quote. And I'll say, well, is it a quote or is it an estimate? And they'll say, well, what do you mean? I'll be like, well, contact them and ask them if they'll stand behind their price. We stand behind our price. You're not going to pay a dime more than the $100,000 we quoted. But if they're telling you $50,000, maybe, and they won't stand behind it, you have to ask yourself which if you want to take that risk or you want to go with us. So what you're doing is you're calling out something that's normally invisible, which is who's taking the risk. And in a fixed price model, if it's value priced or otherwise, the developer is taking a lot of the risk. They're taking all the budgetary risk. So that's for the right kind of clients. And in fact, most business owners despise risk. They hate it. They want certainty, and they'll pay a lot more to get certainty instead of having this geez, I hope it doesn't go over budget. especially if you're talking to like someone who's not the owner and they have a boss and they don't want to go back to the well for more budget, because that looks really bad for them. So they're not even spending their own money. They're going to pick the safest option, which will be you, even though you're more expensive. There's also trust issues, but like, we're not even talking about that. Like, just assuming you're trustworthy and you've got good case studies and testimonials and you've done good work for other people and they trust you. It's a whole nother show we could do about why would they trust you or why wouldn't they. But assuming that they believe what you're saying and your claims are credible, then you're going to be the least risky option. Well, we can spend more and get the least risky option, or we can take a risk and maybe spend less, maybe end up spending more anyway.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so just my answer is ask them if they'll stand behind their price, and I'll bet you they're going to say no, they won't.
Yeah. We're nearly out of time. I feel like I could talk for hours and hours about this. I'll have to get you back on episode 50 or something. But I've got 2 questions from Twitter that I wanted to read to you. The first one was from Darren Pinder. It's in response to a question I asked, what's your number one problem with value-based pricing? And he says, I think it's my assumption that the client will always try to use it to drive the price down by being misleading about the potential value. Do you find that ever happens?
Ooh, this guy's worked with a lot of really bad clients. So when you go into a sales conversation, a sales interview, it goes both ways. I specifically call it a sales interview because it's like a job interview. You don't just go in with your hat in hand and like beg for the position. You're interviewing the employer too. And if you go into a sales conversation, like a sales interview, and you have a why conversation and you say, well, okay, thanks for all this information. Why this? Why do you want to do this? And they get all, like, oh, I can't believe you would question our approach. And they get all snooty or whatever. And maybe they've got a really smart WordPress expert who wrote the book on it and speaks to all the conferences and contributes to Core and really does know exactly what needs to be done. And they just want, like, be quiet and do what I asked you to do. If you're in a meeting like that, see you later. Like, that's not going to go well. And to me, dealing with, and look, maybe the person should be like that. You're just not a good fit, right? Like, if you have someone like that who's like a worldwide, like Matt Mullenweg is sitting across the table from you and he's telling you, I want you to do this. Are you going to question him? Probably not. Maybe. Yeah. But the point is, if the person sitting across the table from you isn't interested in engaging in that level of conversation, it's probably a bad fit. People who will engage in that level of conversation aren't going to be deceitful and tricky. And if they were, you're just going to, I don't know, maybe to me, it just seems obvious, and I've been doing it for 15 years, so I'm good at it. But that comes down to straight up like, people skills. Here's another thing that I sort of my insurance against working with bad clients or bad fit clients, and like, it is my broad strokes is like, I won't work with anybody that I wouldn't want to sit down and have dinner with or go out for drinks. Yeah. And that solves a lot of problems. Like, if you immediately don't like the person, don't work with them. And if you do have to work with them for the money, recognize that you're in for a wild ride. Everybody's done it. They've red flags blowing past them, like, but I need the money, and they take the job, and it's a disaster, right? So if you're dealing with someone who's like a real, negotiator and price buyer, and you're not clicking with, you don't like them, you don't really trust them, you think they're lying to you, don't work with them. Now, worst case scenario for this question asker, worst case scenario, and somebody is playing this game like, oh, well, this person's going to value price. First of all, I don't tell clients that I value price. I just say, I'll give you a fixed price for the project. I don't get into like the nuts and bolts of how I figure the price out. So probably no one would think to do this in the first place. It's a very abstract question. It doesn't. I don't know how it would happen in reality. But let's say the person did underestimate or present a lower value, or present a budget that's really low. Then it doesn't matter, because then you're like, okay, it's only worth $5,000 to these people. So what can I do for $500 that would move the needle for them? Maybe the project's too small. I don't want to do something for $500. I won't get out of bed for $500. So maybe there's no fit. But if they present this value to you that's artificially lowered, then you're still fine, because you just price under the value that they projected to you. And they would end up making more profit than you would expect because they misrepresented the value. But you're still making a profit because you're taking that value. It's $10,000. I'll give them a $500 option, and I'll give them a $1,200 option, and I'll give them the $5,000 option, which is over their value, and say, okay, I'm gonna flip a couple of switches in their WordPress config for $500. You still come out ahead because everybody, So sorry for the long answer, but one, don't work with people you don't trust. Don't work with people you don't trust, period. And if they give you a low value, you wouldn't even know it. Let's say you do trust them and you don't know they give you a low value, it's still fine because you're just going to do less work. So
yeah, that makes sense. One more question from Twitter. This one's from Steve Perry. He says, my sticking point is those times when we're just completing small task-based jobs for clients. Those jobs that need doing but don't really add much value. How do you quote for those?
I would give them to someone else to do. So you know that if you build something for someone, eventually it's going to be maintained. It's not just done. It's like a car. You have to keep it up. So things change, the platform changes, all these things change, security problems, all these things, like things need maintenance. But if you want to make architect money, you can't be running around mopping floors at the end. So you have to decide, am I going to build a business where I make a nice living doing support, and that business looks a particular way, and I know people who do it. They're optimized for doing support and maintenance. And then I know other people who are like, nah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to build a bunch of, all these people who are on call and people in different time zones so they can jump on fires and all this stuff. That's perfectly valid if that's what you want to do. But you're not going to have fun, especially if you're a soloist, you're not going to have fun trying to do support stuff on one end and architecture stuff on the other end. And the support stuff is the least profitable because no one values it. It's like, I just want my car to work. I don't want to put gas in it. I don't want to have to change the oil and change all these windshield wipers. It's so annoying. So you're not going to have a value conversation about replacing your windshield wipers. And anybody can do it. So many people can do it. It's commodity work. So what you could do, but you also, here's the problem though. You do build the building or you build the WordPress site and you don't want to leave the client high and dry. And people tell themselves this story that if we keep the relationship alive by doing maintenance, then if another project comes up, they'll hire us again. And it's like, well, that's a lot of opportunity cost in the meantime. So maybe what you do is at the end of the project, your option 3 includes a handoff to an internal developer that you help them hire, or an introduction to a big support shop that does WordPress that handles that for them. Or part of it is you migrate them to WP Engine or some managed hosting service or whatever. So you don't have to do all of that stuff. So at the end of the day, you have to decide how you want to spend your time. And I'm not saying leave your clients high and dry, but give them some option other than working with you to deal with this maintenance stuff, unless you want to build a business around doing maintenance, which I think you can make profitable if it's a volume business, and I wouldn't want that lifestyle. Yeah,
absolutely. Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today, for sharing your knowledge with our listeners. It's been a really fascinating conversation. I'd love to follow it up again in the future.
Yeah, sounds great.
To finish up, what are the top resources if somebody wants to find out more about value-based pricing? Where should they look next?
First place to go, if you like what I'm saying but you want to hear more, the best place to go is valuepricingbootcamp.com. That'll redirect you to a sign up for a 7-day email course. It goes into a lot of these topics in more depth, and you can reply to any email and and it goes straight to my inbox so we can have a conversation. That's the best way. Also, if you want to read a book, I highly recommend Alan Weiss's Value-Based Fees. It's a great book. I reread it on a regular basis. He has a similar, why conversation type stuff. He has a whole bunch of marketing things in there and a whole bunch about value pricing and even advisory retainers. It's a great book. So I'd recommend that. Where else? For WordPress people, where else would I go? Blair Enns, Chris Doe, they're all, who else am I forgetting? David C. Baker, David Fields. There's a lot of people out there who are talking about value pricing, either in general or for other industries. I'm the only person I know of who normally talks to developers. So I sort of understand the specific concerns of having a software project and scope creep and all that. But yeah, any of those things I think would be a really good way to spend your time.
Awesome. I'll put links to all those in the show notes. And one last question, where can listeners connect with you and find out more about what you do?
Yeah, my mailing list. So I send a daily email, and you can reply to any message. It goes right to me. I read them all. I respond to all the ones that I can. Usually most of them, especially the ones that have really clear, specific questions, I get back to right away.
Once again, Jonathan, thank you so much for being on the show today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That wraps up my interview with Jonathan Stark. I hope you found the interview insightful and interesting, and I really hope it challenges you like it's challenged me to rethink the whole pricing model and how it can work for you and your clients in a different and potentially better way. It's obvious that the value-based pricing approach is a challenging approach. Like Jonathan said, everyone does hourly-based billing because it's easy. Everybody understands it. There's less to get your head around. There's less resistance up front. But it really does seem to me that if we can break through some of those barriers, then for the right project and the right people, value-based pricing could really make a massive difference to a business. If you did enjoy the episode, please consider sharing this on social networks with people that you know, people that you think might find it useful. It really makes a massive difference. It takes a long time to put together even one episode of this show, and I'd really love to get it out to the people that need to hear it and that would find it useful. Please also consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. You can do so at pricingwp.highrise.digital, where you'll find all of the episodes and the subscription links. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.